first off, thanks everyone for coming out. Just saying that, attending trainings like this or doing stuff like this, it honestly puts you far above a lot of other departments that I've spoke to. So, yeah, it's been like 5 years since we've done any types of radio training. Usually it's, here's your radio, here's how you talk, and that's all that ever occurs. So learning more the ins and outs of these radios is helpful, learning how to navigate it. They're awesome tools. But yeah, so once again, thanks for taking time out of your evening here to attend this. So I'm Josh Brinkman. I'm St. Louis County Emergency Operations Manager, work out of the Sheriff's Office. So Dewey Johnson, he recently, 6 months ago now, got a promotion. So now he's overseeing 911 dispatch, radio shop, as well as he's my direct supervisor over emergency management as well. So he was gonna attend tonight, but sends his regards. He got triple booked tonight, so I'm covering for him up here. But yeah, this will be relatively informal here, so if you got any questions or whatever, holler them out, no worries. And we will make this as pain-free as possible as well. So the first thing about ARMER stands for Allied Radio Matrix for Emergency Response. There's a lot of standards with it. The reason for that is there is 20,000 plus radios statewide that operate off of this that all do relatively the same thing. So there has to be some kind of structure to it. Not everyone can just have these radios and use them however they want. There needs to be standards. So one of the standards with ARMER radio is trainings like this. It can be like this where myself, Dewey, maybe a dispatch supervisor is coming up, talking at you, giving you all the info. You can do it in-house too. You say, hey, tonight we're gonna do radio trainings, we're gonna pick them up, let's navigate to an STAC, let's navigate to a Northeast, let's find commons, and we're gonna reserve out maybe one of these talk groups from dispatch so that we can actually talk on it and test it and play around with it. That's ARMER training as well. Getting hands-on with the equipment is the most important thing. So by the standard, getting that training reoccurring at least every couple years. There's some online modules you can do as well if you were ever so inclined. But personally, I like picking up the piece of equipment. I don't necessarily just like looking at a computer screen and trying to learn something new myself. Hands-on is always best. Another one of the main standards that you're probably actually familiar with, I'm going to skip over some of this, is the standard for air medical. So with an STAC, when you have air medical coming in, a dispatch says, all right, hey, you're going to be using STAC 2. The standard is, in the entire state of Minnesota, every single radio has all of the STACs, but we don't want everyone tuned in to STAC 2 for your landing zone. Should only be 2 radios in the entire state, not counting dispatch centers, but 2 radios out in the field in the entire state that are on STAC 2. One in that helicopter and the other one with the landing zone officer. Because if the landing zone officer needs to communicate critical emergency traffic to that helicopter that's about to hit a power line or a tree that bent over that they couldn't see in the dark or whatever the case is, and I'm sitting listening at STAC 2 at home because I'm really interested in this call that I have no reason to actually know about or hear, and I lean on my radio and key up, and now chief can't make a communication to the helicopter. Now, people die, people get hurt, it's a bad thing. So that's one of the most commonly known standard is with STAC use. So another thing with ARMER is there's a lot of government bureaucracy with it. So what I mean by that is there's not one person that's in charge of everything ARMER. There's not one guy or gal at the state that says, you will do this, I will put a tower here, you aren't gonna use your radio for this. No, it's every region in the state and down to every department has a voice to say, hey, I want funds that are coming through the state or through counties to be spent in which way or another, or hey, we have issues with our system in this area and we want to lobby to have the state put up a tower in this area to help our system out. A lot of that's already been done as far as the full build out of the ARMER system, but there's reoccurring meetings. So to give you a quick little idea, skip to this one, these are all the different boards and committees and groups throughout the state. There is a ton of them, and it gets really confusing sometimes to sit in on because which meeting for this one, or is it this one, or is it this one? It's a lot of the same people overlap in a lot of these. But like I said, when you get down to like the user board meeting, anyone can attend those. So you can say, hey, it's not working for me, or it's working great, or this policy that we're using in this area isn't working good, or A lot of the conversation is, hey, we just had a new school built and our radios don't work in the school and we need a BDA put in the school. Is there any grants out there for that? Is there any state money, county money? How can we make it so our radios work inside this new building? So again, lets it so that all of us can say, you know, what we want to see this system work out, because it's built for us as users. So the whole ARMER system built out statewide, it was all paid for by cell phone funds, a little cell phone tax, E911. So you see that every time you pay your cell phone bill. By and large, that's done with the tower build out. You'll still see that little tax surcharge on there. Those funds get used to fund 911 dispatch centers. So unfortunately, we don't get the tax savings, even though they're not building $1 million towers anymore. But it helps build out our dispatch centers and keep them running smooth. So again, traffic flows back to us as it should. Red Lake was the last county to adopt it. Kind of an interesting thing with, if you're talking speaking plain common language over the radio, Red Lake being kind of an island for a little while everyone else migrated to ARMER, they started hearing surrounding counties radio traffic for the first time ever, and they were hearing code 4. We think code 4, everything's all good, right? Well, in Red Lake County, code 4 meant shots fired. So they were really confused that all these gunfights were going on outside of Red Lake. Didn't really make a whole lot of sense. So again, you know, common language, speak clearly, speak plainly. We got a lot of different agencies that we interact with. You get bigger incidents, you might have 15 different departments or agencies all working together. We all need to know what we're saying. So really trying to get away from, you know, even in the law enforcement world, getting away from 10 codes as best we can. Plain language. Plain language is key. So who's on the system in the county? Pretty much everybody in one capacity or another. You got the mine, fire departments, court security, both minimum, like AJC, NERC, Forest Service, and DNR, with exception, like I said, with the Forest Service, ARMER is not their primary radio system. They do have ARMER radios that they can use to be able to interact with the rest of us. But they're a federal agency, so they use VHF radios nationwide. If they have a crew coming from Montana in to help out with the fire here in Minnesota, they're bringing VHF radios from the national level. They're flashing them, programming them here in Minnesota, but those can't talk with our ARMER radios. But in their command posts and different, you know, things like that, they do have ARMER radios that if they need to be the go-between their system and ours, they do have that capability. A lot of different city public works departments, and we're working right now to outfit county public works with full ARMER as well. And the best thing about that, for one, county can't talk to itself, public works side throughout the county, so that's not a great thing for them. But it'd be good for all of us. Say we get straight line winds or some kind of storm where we got trees down all over the place, and we're having to tag team this effort. Say we're having different fire departments opening up roads and county public works is opening up roads. If we can all talk to each other, we can triage the situation and handle it much more reasonably. All the way to Border Patrol, Coast Guard, 148 Fighter Wing, both the Duluth and the Hibbing Range airports. ARMER's everywhere. And that's a good thing because we can all talk to each other if we need to. So ARMER is broken up into 7 state regions. So if you've never looked at a map of Minnesota, we are in the Northeast region, and we are conveniently placed dead center in the Northeast region. So on your radio, if you've ever seen those NEs, that is Northeast, because we are in the Northeast region. So by standard, any radio that's in this blue section, if that's your home base, you have all of the Northeast in there. So we can interact, we can talk with any single agency or department anywhere in the Northeast region by talking on one of those. If we come out of those, we usually have to transition to an STAC because those are a statewide. Everybody in the state has a statewide. So if you go over to the Northwest, they have NWs. Central, CEs. So every region has their own separate bank like that to be able to talk with themselves. A lot of bordering counties and bordering departments and agencies will have both because they hop and skip between there, and incidents and fires and everything else, medicals, they don't really abide by county lines too well. So depending on where you are, your radio programming might have a little bit of flexibility. So just a zoomed in view. Like I said, all the counties, all of the tribes have it as well, including all the cities. Just an overview map of the tower sites. So I think the number is up to 338 state-owned tower sites right now. Like I said before, each tower site, roughly $1 million. We do have some northern St. Louis County, that's too far ahead, we'll get to that. Northern St. Louis County that they're off-grid type sites, so it's solar with battery backup type thing. Those are $2 million sites, so they are expensive. But again, fortunately, all of them are paid for right now, already. Local enhancement sites, all that means is, say a county said, hey, the state, we don't feel put up enough, or we have a black hole of coverage, we're gonna pay for another site. Or maybe, City of Duluth put up a couple enhancement areas, enhancement sites, because how much radio traffic they have on a day-to-day normal basis, they enhance the network in their local area to help cover that load. ARMER's designed for 95% county by county mobile coverage. So mobile is in your engine, is in your tender. These are portables. So by mobile coverage, a mobile radio installed in a vehicle has more power, it has more range than your portable does. It's putting out a lot more on those antennas. So if you're ever in a situation where you're mobile, you're getting spotty coverage, if you're by a vehicle or something with a hardwired one, you have more range, you have more reception off of those almost always. But again, that 95%, we all know the coverage isn't 100% foolproof. There are holes in most townships, in most cities, and throughout the county. There are known little gaps here and there. Our terrain is not like the Northwest or southern Minnesota where we're flat and those towers spit out that radio signal for miles and miles and miles because clear line of sight. We have trees, we have terrain features around here, and that soaks up radio signal. But by and large, the system does a pretty dang good job, especially compared to what we used to have. So this is a coverage map. So that green is your radio should work. There should be no reason why it shouldn't. Blue, maybe a portable might not work the best. You never know. But again, there might be some exceptions. Anything white, it's kind of hard to see, but you got a little bit of white up in the boundary waters. If we were able to zoom this in, there are white. That's probably too small for this map to show, but there might be a little bit of a pocket down here, down the hill, whatever. But by and large, you can see the coverage is pretty dang good statewide. Like I said, you can see in the Northwest, you can see where all of those towers actually are because that signal is propagating in a perfect circle. We don't have that so much in St. Louis County, maybe except for these 3 tower sites here. So we have so much terrain features, especially up on the Iron Range, where things they don't make it across the hill, so you got to have a tower site on the other side to pick up the slack. So taking a step back from what we're using now, a conventional radio system, so like I was saying, the U.S. Forest Service is using VHF, right? So they're using frequencies every single time they talk. So in this scenario, let's say the sheriff's office was issued 3 radio frequencies for the entire county. In Public Works, they get 1 frequency to use. Well, maybe day to day that works good. Sheriff's office is busy enough to need to have 3. And Public Works just doing whatever they're doing, grading or whatever, snow plowing, 1 frequency is all they need. Well, again, what happens if we get straight line winds or like that blizzard last winter when we actually had winter, December time frame where we get dumped on with snow. Public Works is going crazy. That 1 frequency is not enough for them anymore. They would love to be able to use these extra frequencies that our towers have, but they can't do it because the radios aren't programmed with it. And those are only reserved for sheriff's office. Back in this time, you could have state patrol with a frequency that says, we like this sheriff's office, we'll share a frequency with them, but I don't get along with this sheriff very well, so I'm not gonna give his office access to our frequency. Well, law enforcement can't interrupt. Same thing happened with fire departments. Fire department A doesn't like fire department B, and they're far enough away, and we don't wanna share. We don't need to talk to them, we don't ever need them, until the day that you need them, right? So not a good use of frequencies, especially if you can't quickly share those and quickly interop and connect the dots between them. It's also a lot more expensive to do it this way because every single tower needs to be spitting out all these frequencies all the time, and you can only fit so many on each tower depending on your equipment. So with ARMER, it's called a trunking system. So what, a lot of fancy talk. The whole the trainer for this course was 2 extremely long 8-hour days. I will say that. So this is dumbing it down more to my level, I'll be honest. But a trunking system is, instead of frequencies, it's just a digital signal. Every time I key up on this radio, it's using a different frequency. I don't know that it's doing that, nor do I really care. All that I care is what's on my display. I know what the digital channel is, and they call them talk groups. Doesn't matter if you call it a channel, it's all the same difference. But if it says FE2, I key up on FE2, and I key up on FE2, it's the same thing, but it might be a different frequency every time. But again, I don't care. So every tower has what's called a site controller. So most towers, vast majority of them, have 5 different talk paths. So that means you can have 5 simultaneous conversations at that tower site. If 6 people are trying to talk, that 6th person's gonna get blocked because 5 people are already talking. So one of those talk paths is always consumed by what's called the site controller. Super fancy controller at the tower site. When I key up on my radio within milliseconds is talking. Go to something that no one's talking on here. I key up. If I have reception, hold on, stand by 1 second. I got one more, we should be able to make it work. So the second from when I press to the end of that tone, this radio has talked to the tower, it's talked to that site controller. Site controller says, yes, you are allowed to talk on FE27. Go ahead and transmit. And we're gonna issue you a frequency to talk on. Happens very, very quick. The same thing is anyone else that has FE27, that site controller, just talk to their radio as well and say, hey, we're gonna tune your radio to this specific frequency that we're about to pump up. So a lot of fancy computer wizardry happening extremely quickly. So an example of this would be, you have fire, law, EMS. Everyone has their radio on. Maybe fire is sitting on FE2. We got law up here sitting on law 2. And EMS, most likely FE2 as well, but we'll say for the sake of this, they got something else that they're sitting on. Everyone's sitting on a different talk group, but all their radios are constantly talking to that site controller. It's just like a cell phone. If I'm driving down the highway, I don't know what tower my cell phone's talking to. Again, nor do I care. I look at how many bars do I have. That's all that I care about. Have I paid my cell phone bill? Yep, I have. As I'm going down that highway, it's saying, hey, I'm talking to this tower. That tower's getting far away, signal's getting bad. All right, I'm gonna grab the next tower. Radios, just same thing. These radios are like computers, they're like cell phones. So anyway, all these radios are talking to that site controller back and forth, and law gets a call, or hey, they're gonna pull some car over now. So law squad, number 1, presses push to talk, gets the go-ahead tone, goes to the site controller. Site controller says, all right, channel number 4 is open. So it's gonna use channel number 4 at whatever frequency that is. Again, we don't care. And it's gonna move all of those law enforcement radios over to that channel 4. So now that law squad 1 is talking through this talk path here. Fire EMS hasn't moved over because they're not selected on law 2. They're not hearing that law enforcement traffic. And as soon as that law enforcement officer releases the push to talk, everyone's radios goes back to that site controller. So the main thing to remember with this, again, we don't care which one we're going to or anything like that, but you can only have so many conversations at the same time. So the longer your conversation is, the longer you're keyed up, the longer you're taking up that tower space. Again, most of the time, we don't have any issues with it. It's very rare for any of our towers in St. Louis County to get what's called busied out, and that would be if every single one of these is tied up, and then one of you keys and get bonk because the tower's busy. It's very rare. We get a monthly report. Usually we don't even make the list, which is a good thing. There's other reasons for the bonking that I'll get into. Usually it's not on the tower's end. So, benefit to ARMER system as opposed to more of a traditional VHF or non-trunk system. Again, improved use of those radio frequencies. So this tower has, we'll say 4 radio frequencies. Well, just out of range of this tower, maybe 2 towers over, you can do the same 4 radio frequencies again, because that signal is not gonna cross, you're not gonna get interference. So we can duplicate those throughout the county over and over and over. There's only so much radio spectrum that you can have, where if you want, I don't even know what the total number of talk groups we have in this county, it's gotta be 300-400 talk groups. We can't have 300 or 400 frequencies. We might only have 20 throughout the county. Well, we can use 20 because everything's digital and it doesn't really care or matter. So improved use of those puts everyone on the same platform. Like I said, all those agencies that are in the county, all the different agencies and departments throughout the state, everyone is on the same platform using the same tool. Flexibility, again, for interoperability. If you have to talk to somebody, there is a way to do it. We're just talking about STACs. Some of these things are a little bit buried in your radio. You got to find them, but it's like a big toolbox. Some of the tools are very deep. They're very rusty. They haven't been touched in years, but they are there and they will get the job done. Some of the other nice features, push to talk ID or the alias list. So depending on how your radio was programmed, this radio's programming, the alias or the name for this radio is SUEM2P, 2 portable. So when I key up dispatch on their screens, on their consoles, they can see the name of this radio on their screen. So they might not know that 2P, 2 portable, is Josh, but they at least know, hey, this is a St. Louis County, this is an emergency management radio. That's what we know. Now we're gonna get a hold of emergency management. So there are times if you're listening to the radio and maybe you hear an agency or you hear somebody talk, you're like, man, I didn't catch which department that was. But St. Louis County dispatchers or Johnny on the spot, and they go, yeah, go ahead, Mackinnon. I go, oh, what the heck? You know, I must have missed that, or maybe I don't have good reception. Remember, they have a cheat sheet in front of them. They see that Mackinnon 2 portable fired up on there, so they know who it was. It also goes into play with your call, not your call, but with your emergency button. When you hit that emergency button, it tells dispatch what the radio name was. So the only radios throughout the county that are individual specific, that dispatch actually has a list, are the deputies. So those ones we keep track of internally, so they have a spreadsheet that, you know, if they see 7218 fired off their emergency button, they go, oh, who's that? Okay, Nick Toohey, gotcha. They know how that works. For fire departments, between how many departments there are and potential turnovers and new members and this and that, the reliance is on the fire chiefs to maintain a list of knowing who has what radio. So in the event of an emergency button push and they can't get a hold of anyone on that department, dispatch can call up the fire chief and say, hey, we got one of your radios going off. Do you know whose it is? Maybe try to find them. A person could be not on a call, they could be at home having an actual emergency situation themselves, and that's all they could do was hit that button. So it's always good to get a hold of those. Vast majority of the emergency button pushes are accidental. Happens all the time, and that's okay. And it's either called the wake up dispatch button or the dispatcher appreciation button. It fires off all the bells and whistles inside dispatch. They cannot turn the volume down. It's very loud, very annoying, and interrupts whatever they are doing, but that's okay. We'll get into that a little bit deeper in a little bit, but so that's another good feature with it. Also, this radio inhibit. If your radio were to get stolen or lost, let dispatch or the radio shop know as soon as you can. No harm, no foul, but what they can do is the radio techs can turn your radio into a brick. Anyone that has it, stole it, found it, whatever, they can't turn it on and do any damage with it, right? The last thing you want is to be on a call and some kid found your radio and they're trying to talk to you while you're trying to put a fire out. Not a good deal. So turn it into a break. If it gets stolen, it gets even more fun, because then our investigators can make it so that radio hot mics. These things are so smart that even though this knob is turned off and the screen is off, they can turn it on as long as it has battery in there. And now they could hear everything I'm saying and, oh yeah, whatever, I'm talking about how I just stole this radio and where I live maybe, I don't know. So then they can come and track it down, hopefully. Or they can make it so every time the radio keys up, it only goes back to the investigator's radio so they can have a little chat with that person. So again, report it early as you can. No one's gonna come rain down on you for losing them. It happens. They get dropped out in the field, they get dropped in a call, you get lost, whatever. Hopefully it gets recovered, but if it doesn't, we can break them and do something about that. So interoperability with ARMER. Best way to think about it is this bullseye. You're always gonna wanna try to aim for the center of the bullseye, right? You wanna talk, if you're only talking within your own department, you're at the center of that bullseye. You're talking within your own agency or department. So every single agency and department has your own admin. You can use those internally. Nobody else has those. Dispatch doesn't even have those. They're not listening to it. Not to say that somebody with a scanner out in town isn't listening to your thing, so don't use it for the hunting shack and saying stuff that is gonna get you in trouble with the chief. People out there can and do scan the ARMER towers to listen to things. It's not encrypted. But if you're only talking within yourself, aim for the center of that bullseye. Use your admin for that. That's what it's for. Okay, now we're going out into that local. So we'll call local, for our example, North St. Louis County. A local would be like an FE2. That's a local area within our county, but you're able to talk to other local resources, other fire departments. You can talk to dispatch, so on and so forth. Now you want to go county-wide. Well, FE1, FE2, okay, now maybe FE2, you're getting a little bit broader out throughout the whole county. Regional ring, that's our northeast. If there's another department that you want to talk to, it's not your own, so you can't use agency. It's not North St. Louis County, so well, we can't use our local FE2 or anything like that. It's not anywhere within the county, so we can't use anything St. Louis County specific. It's a different county, but they're still within that northeast region. Hey, we can use a northeast. We don't need to use an STAC for that. Okay, now they're outside of the region. Or maybe it's a resource that travels the entire state, potentially, like Air Medical does. Now we gotta go to an STAC, because that's gonna be our primary reason for doing that. Any resources that are statewide, the primary thing they use is an STAC, because they go all over the place. And then lastly, by far the most infrequent one would be national. And I'll show you on the fleet map where those are. Again, very rare to see those actually used outside of a training environment, but they do exist in your radios. So here's a zoomed in view of the tower sites. I have printouts of the tower sites if you want copies of those. It breaks it up and zooms it in even better. But with any tower site, let me back up. So there's two different types of towers. Some of these towers operate like my example, where you have your control and then 4 separate talk paths. Other towers, especially coming across Hibbing, Virginia, and Ely, these are all what's called a simulcast system. All of those towers are firing at the same time. And I always get it mixed up. It's either 9 or 10 talk paths. So what it does by having all those fire at the same time, they're working in tandem with each other. So you might have, say, 10 talk paths. One of them is your site controller. Well, now across the iron range, you could have 9 conversations potentially. It helps out with scanning too. When we were just discussing scanning before we started, if I'm up in Kabtogma and I'm scanning FE1, I'm not selected, I'm not parked on it, my radio doesn't display FE1, it's still displaying FE2, but I have programmed in my radio, I want to scan FE1. If nobody else's radio within range of this tower is parked and displaying FE1, I'm not going to hear it, because nobody's radio is telling that tower, whenever FE1 fires, I want you to broadcast that. So we're not using any of those resources off of that tower because nobody's radio is telling it what to do. With a simulcast system like this, whether it's Air Medical, any specific talk group that was issued out, working channel FE7 was issued out for this call. The chances are somebody is parked on every single which and one of those throughout this entire area, so your scan is going to work through a much broader area, so it is highly beneficial. The other thing, looking at our incoming spring wildfire potential season we got, there might be mutual aid either coming this direction or from ours going elsewhere. If you hit the county line, FE2 is not going to just suddenly stop working. Obviously, the signal still propagates beyond the county line. Even if you get a ways into Lake County, for example, it's still going to work. Every single county, their towers, and anything that's county specific, it works within that first ring of the towers into the next county. And same thing the other way. So if Lake County's coming our way, their Lake County specific, maybe their Lake County fire main, that's still going to work off the Brimson Tower. Maybe as far as the payload tower, they're going to get that. So we get double overlap crossover. So it helps out with those boundary mutual aid type stuff that we're doing. And actually, all of Lake County is a single simulcast system. All the towers fire at the same time. So the benefit to us is, since ours work on the first ring of towers, well, that's making the tower on the east side of Lake County fire as well. So actually, all of St. Louis County's talk groups work in Lake County as well. So we get kind of lucky with our neighbor like that. So here is the fleet map. Who has never seen one of these before? Everyone's seen? Okay. So I do apologize. I only have 3 copies with me right now. Evelyn ran me dry yesterday. I left too many on the tables, I think. Whoever wants,
I think we got some.
Okay. And I can definitely, I got one more for whoever wants it. No takers? All right, that's fine. Yeah, and I can make more of these and run them off or whatever. If you figure out you need more for your truck or at home or the bathroom or whatever, we can make more. The fleet map is just the guide to what's programmed in your radio. It's your map of your programming. Don't ask me why it's called a fleet map, but it should be a radio map. But all right, that's another for another day. When you're looking at your fleet map, across your top you have a zone. So all of these are your different zones. And then going up and down, you have position 1 all the way down to position 16. So with transitioning positions 1 through 16 on your radios, that's your knob at the top. And that's pretty much uniform with any model of radios. Like Evelyn is running 3 different models of radios, but again, it doesn't matter. All of them are the same. Transitioning zones, going left to right on this list, that's where you will see some differences depending on your radio models. But with your guys', I'll double check on that before I get too much into it. Should be your buttons on the front. It takes you left and right, essentially. So every agency or department has what's called your home zone. So again, that's an up and down. Your home zone is what 95, 99% of your radio traffic is. It's rare to have to go left and right on this list. Most of the time, it's that top skinny knob that you're twisting left or right, which goes up and down. So for any department that's operating off of FE2 as their paging, FE2 in this FB zone, that's technically your home zone. Why is it your home? Because if I turn that knob all the way to the left, I'm getting up to FE2 my paging. If I turn it all the way to the right to another hard stop, I also get a dispatcher on the other end at 911. So that's a safety feature that's built into almost every single talk group, is all the way left, all the way right to a hard stop on that knob. You can close your eyes, you can be in a smoke-filled building, it doesn't matter. There is a dispatcher on the other end of that. If I go and start screaming on FE26 right now, asking for help, chances are no one's gonna hear me, because we don't have 26 dispatchers monitoring every single one of these at all times. Even if you were issued out FE26 as your working channel, a dispatcher doesn't go, yep, I'm gonna come with you to FE26, because we have so much staff and we can just cover all these at the same time. Nope. That dispatcher is staying on FE2. That's what's in their ear. So again, hard stop either direction. You got a dispatcher, you're calling for help, you need resources, whatever the case is. That's how you can get to them. So like I said before, your second position on your home zone, that's your admin. So again, every department, every agency has their own separate admin. There's no crossover between them. But again, that's yours to train on. That's yours for, hey, grab me the pack of water out of the back of your truck and bring it in. Use it, abuse it, don't abuse it. As far as inappropriate language, things that you probably shouldn't be doing. But if it's in your mission, whatever, you got kids doing a tour of the hall and you want to use your admin to help do the logistics and manage all these kids running around, yeah, use your admin. Go ahead. You don't have to ask for permission. You don't need to tell anyone you're doing it. You can use it. And then conveniently, all right, I need to interop with maybe a south-based agency, or you've got to talk to the south fire dispatcher because you just crossed the cotton line. All right, we got FE1. Now we got FE3 through 10. These are going to be the most commonly issued working channels for a fire incident, right? They're always going to issue out the first available one, starting at the lowest number, which is at the top of this list. So if you're issued out FE3 for your working channel, that means in the entire county, you are the fire incident that's going on right now. You got the first one of the litter. If you are issued out FE10, then that means you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 other incidents potentially that are occurring at the same time as what you got going on. Now, some incidents can be, you get issued more than one working channel if you need it. Say you want, hey, can we get 3 working channels? Absolutely. Dispatch is going to say, okay, you get 3, 4, and 5. Your top one or your lowest number, so in this scenario, FE3, that should be where IC is. Because if dispatch needs to come off of their talk group to get a hold of IC, that's where they want to find you, at the top or the lowest number that you were issued. Maybe FE4 could be for interior, and FE5 is for water ops. Perfect. You can separate different functions out. The more talk groups you need, ask for them. You have to ask for them, though. That's key. The whole system is dispatcher driven. They have what's called the status board. So they can see not only within the county what's being issued out and what's used for each incident. So they can see, okay, they want 3 of them. Oh crap. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7's already issued out. So I got to give them 8 through 10. Perfect. They can also see throughout the region and throughout the state. So again, if you're issued out STAC 7, and that means there are 6 other STACs being used in the state at that very moment that are being consumed. So you have to request them, you get issued them, they'll give you what you need, they just have to figure out which specific ones those are. Going down, it's kind of hard to see on the screen, very lime green, but common 1 and common 2. Those are by the name commons. Common operating talk group for law enforcement, fire, EMS, Coast Guard, Proctor School, if they got, anybody and everybody can operate off of a common. The most common uses for a common might be a traffic accident with injury, right? You get a car that rolls over, you need extrication, you need medical, and you need law enforcement for traffic control on this highway or this county road. So for those, dispatch knows that they are going to issue out a common rather than an FE. If they issue out an FE, law enforcement has most of them, but not all of them, and it's very difficult for them to find them. Does law enforcement always go to a common when that's issued out? No. We're working on it. Doesn't always happen. You're trying to get a hold of that deputy or that cop or the state patrol officer, anybody. Maybe they're not answering, and you have to do the roundabout way through dispatch so that they can get a hold of them on their law channel. Yeah, I get it. And it makes it frustrating sometimes, but in theory, everyone should hop over to that common if you're working the same incident. Right below that orange stripe, going all the way across, FSOA. So that stands for Fire Scene of Action. So keep in mind, fire scene of action. Only fire departments have these. But what the these are used for scene of action, small area, right? It's going radio to radio. We're not bouncing off the tower as a repeater and then back to a radio. So scene of action is good use for them. You go into a structure, into a building, like I said, I only have one bar. This building's not that big. The walls don't appear to be too thick and there's plenty of windows, but I still only had one bar. If this building was double the size, or I go into a more interior part of this building, I might not be able to talk anymore because I'm trying to talk to that tower. But if I go to an FSOA, I easily get out of this building and I can talk out of it. The considerations when you go to those FSOAs is, since you're not hitting that ARMER network anymore, you're not talking to dispatch. They can't hear you on an FSOA. You're only getting 3 to 5, maybe on a super straightaway line of sight, maybe 8 miles. But again, you're getting outside that building just fine. So again, you're not talking to dispatch, nobody else can hear you. If you need to go to an FSOA, it's always recommended that IC knows that. If you're in the building and you can't talk, if I go to an FSOA, no one's gonna be on the other end because I didn't tell them I needed to. But I might need to exit the building, say, hey, I can't talk to you, let's go to FSOA 1. I'm gonna do that. IC says, yeah, copy that. IC is gonna grab their second radio and have FSOA on one of them, and then whatever the working channel was on the other. So they can still talk to dispatch with this radio, and they can talk to that interior crew with the other radio. Another good use for an FSOA, you're again on the side of the road, and we're doing traffic control. So there's so much radio chatter on this FE7 that's going on, and I'm just saying blue car go, red car stop. I can see them, but I need an easy way to talk to them, and I don't want to step on the important radio traffic that's going on. So I say, hey chief, we're gonna go to FSOA 1 for traffic control. Yeah, I gotcha. Now somebody knows that we can't hear everything else that's going on. They know where to find us in the radio, or to flag us down. And now we can talk back and forth. Even though we're line of sight, we're too far, I don't feel like shouting, losing my voice, whatever the case is. Good use for an FSOA. Also, you wanna use it for training, go right ahead. Dispatch doesn't control the FSOAs because they can't hear them. So you wanna use it for whatever you got going on, do it. Obviously you get into maybe more populated areas, there's always the potential that somebody else is using it for an actual incident, nobody really knows. So you can turn your radio on, turn it to FSOA 1. All right, I waited 15 seconds, I don't hear anyone else chattering on it. They'll holler at me if I'm stepping on their toes and I can find something else to talk on. But again, use those as much as you want. And then at the very bottom, it's the same thing across this entire thing, but that SU 911. So, forgot to mention, but SU, that's the moniker for St. Louis County. Like I say, we lost a bet and we didn't get to use SL or something that makes a little bit more sense, so we have SU. So anything with SU is all the way down here. Those are all St. Louis County specific. So Lake County doesn't have SU FE1. Lake County doesn't have our common 1 and 2. They might have an equivalent, but it's different. So SU 911 is for emergency traffic only. That's for maydays, man down, shots fired in the law enforcement world, anything like that, right? On your radio, when you push your emergency button, it brings your radio to SU 911. So how that works is, say we're chattering on FE2 and I accidentally press it and my radio tones, and on the front of it I would see a red indicator saying emergency. It'd flash emergency and then it would flash FE2, emergency, FE2. I'm not on FE2. That flashing red on the screen is emergency, I'm down here. Right after I push that, it tones, this radio goes into 10 seconds of hot link. Dispatch and anyone else scanning SU 911 can hear everything I say. Usually what dispatchers hear is, oh crap, I just hit my red button. Because that's what everyone says, usually with a little bit more colorful language. When that happens, if it's an accident, no harm, no foul, happens usually once a day at least. Dispatch gets woken up, they say, oh, somebody hit it, whose radio was it? They do a status check. That'll be the next communication that I would hear through this radio that's in emergency mode. SUEM2P emergency button press, what's your status? And then I can key up, because I'm still in emergency mode. It brought me to here. I can key up and say, yeah, I'm okay. That was an accidental press. Sorry about that. They say, yep, 10-4, no worries there. So now I need to take my radio out of emergency mode. To do that, I need to just simply turn it off and turn it back on again. If I turn my radio off and back on without validating with dispatch that I'm good, it's gonna make the bells and whistles go off a second time, because my radio never was cleared on their end. They have to clear it, then I have to clear it, and then we're good. If it occurs, or let's say I'm in here doing interior work and roof collapses on me. There's Fire Chiefs Association agreed on a Mayday policy for emergency button presses. There was a conversation of saying, wow, I hate the dang things, and everyone presses them accidentally, let's just disable that button. We can program them so the button does nothing. But the decision was that countywide, the policy for every single fire department in the entire county is, if you are in Mayday, something happens, roof collapses, I'm gonna make every effort that I can to talk on my radio like I normally do. And I can say, Mayday, 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 first floor, roof collapse, trapped in debris, can't get out. Whether that's like this, through my hand mic, any other thing. If I'm incapacitated to the point where my arms aren't working very well, whatever, I can't reach my speaker mic because that got knocked out, all I can do is feel down my antenna and jam my finger around and hope that I'm pushing the orange button. That's my last resort, because I have no other way to actually Mayday right here. The main reason for that is when I push this orange button again, it brings me down here. IC might be sitting on FE3 managing this incident. Say they have so much radio traffic, they might be scanning SU911, but they might not hear you because you just went somewhere else. So again, the primary thing, you always want to try to talk on whatever talk group you are already on, because that's where everyone else is. That's where your other firefighters are on, that's where IC is on, that's where everyone can hear you. That's where your help is, obviously, right? But if you can't, last resort, you push that orange button, dispatch hears it, hopefully IC can. If IC doesn't acknowledge, then dispatch is gonna circle back and get a hold of IC saying, hey, you just had one of your radios go into emergency mode, and then IC can figure out who that is and what the situation is. You'll see there's a lot of duplication on here, right? So I got FE3 is right here, FE3, 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 holy crap, how do I find the right one? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter which zone you are in, as long as your talk group is named the same thing, it is the same thing. So if I'm on zone FA on FE3 here, and somebody else is on zone DF on FE3 right here, our radios will talk to each other. It doesn't matter which zone you're in. It's just another place to find it. So again, having those different home zones, it makes it convenient depending on where you're located or maybe how your department operates. Tools in the toolbox, it's 2 different screwdrivers in 2 different pockets. That's all it is. They're the same shape and size. Now we got a gap in our FEs when these were created. Goes up to FE10, and then it picks back up at FE23. There is no FE11 through FE22. Why? I don't think anyone who set this up remembers why. It probably made a whole lot of sense at the time. One of the talks right now is to redo programming countywide. One of the thoughts would be to add more commons. Having only 2 commons for a county our size, 7,200 square miles, there's not very many. We usually burn those up pretty quick. Why don't we double it, have 4 commons? That would make the most sense. And then also, does it make sense for us to add 11 through 22? Again, this spring, if we get into heavy grass and wildfire, there might be 30 fires going on in the county simultaneously. We might need all of them, and we might need more. We have hit FE30 as being issued out. I think from what I can remember in 2021, I remember I was hearing a lot of FE27s and 28s being issued out because everything else was consumed. So there might be changes to this in the, we'll say near future, but we're at the speed of county government here, so sometime. But anyway, so remember that there is that gap. The gap, I believe, was designed to be if we're getting into mass fatality type incidents or anything else like that, it would be very clear that you're issued out an FE23. Holy cow, I've never heard of that one. I don't even know where it is in my radio, but that's a big deal. That's something extra. So remember that that's only one zone in your programming that you can find those 20s. So now say we're having a special event. We're doing, you guys do a big fish fry here, right? Something, okay, so say you want an FE just to help with logistics for it. Say, yeah, we want to use an FE. Get a hold of dispatch, say, can we get an FE for this date at this time, or this time frame? Sure, absolutely, they'll issue it out to you, no problem. They can do that weeks, months in advance. So they say they're gonna start at the top of this list, at the highest number. Because like incidents, we're starting at the lowest number, so both of them are kind of work their way towards each other as we're going, and hopefully they never meet. But they're gonna give you FE30 if no other special events are going on that day, or no training is going on. Another department calls in and say, hey, we wanna do radio training at that same day and time. And they look at this list and say, oh, fish fry's taken the FE30, so we're gonna give you FE29, and so on and so forth in reverse direction. You can always request those for special events and training. You just call in dispatch, you can get a hold of me, I can get a hold of dispatch. I have some contact numbers up here at the end. Moving one zone further into our FI. You got EVT, stands for event. Event 1 through 4. Those are designed specifically for special events. They should never, hopefully will never, ever be issued for an actual incident. But that's your 4th of July celebration, your air shows, anything like that. Those are always given events. Like the Duluth Air Show, when we run that, we do 8. There's actually 8. They're not on your programming, but there's 8 of them total that our county has that we issue on. And it's everything from Unified Command is on event 1, same kind of thought process, right? Our lowest number is going to be the higher command level. 2 might be public safety. All 3 might be dedicated for fire on and around the airfield, and then you start getting into event 4 might be for parking, event 5 is for security, event 6 is for trash, whatever. So it makes it so we're not consuming these FEs that might be the value of gold when we get into wildfire stuff going on. We're using events that nobody needs for real world emergencies. Now you can still work an emergency situation off those events, and with the air show we do. We try to keep that on those events so dispatchers aren't getting tied down with what's within that event area. Obviously, if we need to get a hold of a dispatcher, they're not monitoring these events, so we still have to go back to that FE1 or FE2. That's where dispatch is, so that's how we get a hold of them. Going one further over, DFD main, Duluth Fire Main. Probably to no surprise, being the busiest fire department in the county, they do have their own separate talk group. But every other department has their talk group as well. They might be coming our way, we might be going their way depending on what's happening, you never know. And it does happen, they do interop with, Hermantown and Proctor all the time. Go one more, couple oddballs in here. Site trunk. You don't ever have to go to this, it just has to exist in your radio and your programming. What is site trunking? If I'm talking on my radio, everything's all good, maybe dispatch isn't answering me. What the heck, I'm looking at my radio, am I on the right talk group? Oh, my radio's flashing and it says site trunk. What does that mean? It means all of the towers, right, in the entire state, it's all a combined network. They're all talking to each other via fiber optic, via microwave dish, anything like that. Site trunking is that tower that you're talking to is a standalone tower now. Maybe a contractor dug the ditch a little bit too deeper in the wrong spot and spliced that fiber optic, or not spliced, cut it, right? So that tower is not talking to the whole network anymore. The tower is still gonna work as a repeater in the range of that tower, so we can still use it for our incident, but it's not going back to dispatch. It's not going all the way down to the state to that bird that's flying in on STAC 2 or anything else like that. You're standalone. I don't think we've ever seen it in St. Louis County, but it has happened in the state where towers have gone into site trunking. If you see that, you need to try to make a cell phone call, hopefully, if you have reception, into dispatch to say, hey, this tower that I'm at, that we're working this incident, or maybe your radio just started flashing it and you're not even doing an incident. let somebody know. There's nothing on dispatch or the radio shop's end that indicates a tower went into standalone mode. Seems kind of goofy with how high-tech everything is, but there's no indication on their end. They won't know. All they're gonna think is you're not answering them. So let somebody know if you ever see those words popping up on your screen. MSP call, Minnesota State Patrol call. That is how you get a hold of State Patrol dispatch. So if we were driving down the road, maybe on a, if you're ambulance service, you're doing transports all over to Timbuktu, right? You're on the highway, maybe I don't even know what county I'm in, I don't know who to get a hold of, but something just happened on the highway in front of me. Geez, State Patrol should probably know about this, whatever it is. You could go to MSP call and get a hold of State Patrol dispatch direct. Now, if it's not the call that you're being dispatched to, or say you're not even on duty and you're just going down to the cities for whatever and you see some wreck on the highway, State Patrol, as well as county dispatches, they prefer if you do a cell phone call into them. The reason for that is they can pull your GPS coordinates off your phone like that. They get a pin drop on their map, so even if you're trying to describe I'm between a big farm field and a small one and there's a burned down barn and I don't see any street signs, I don't know exactly what stretch of the highway, there's no mile marker where I'm at, so I'm not too sure. It gets really confusing over the radio for them as they're trying to figure out exactly where you are. You do a cell phone call, they know where you're at. It makes it real easy for them. They can get all that pertinent information pretty quick from you and you're not tying down their dispatch center necessarily. So, but if you're in a situation, you need to get a hold of them and you don't have cell service, MSP call. And that works anywhere in the entire state. SU announce. That is one that you never want to inadvertently switch to and talk on, because what that does is that activates everything St. Louis County simultaneously. So all the county radios get to hear you with your mix-up at the same time. The main reason for this one, or what this is specifically designed and trained for, is say the dispatch center has a big fire, right? They need to let every single department and agency and send all these tones out saying dispatch center is on fire, we are evacuating, we're gonna activate our backup center, but hey, by the way, you're on your own for the next half an hour until we can activate the other center, maybe longer. But it's made to be mass annunciation to the entire county, or it's not too relevant anymore, like I was telling Outworth, but right when those Chinese spy balloons were floating over, that was a good example of, hey, the Chinese spy balloons are over Minnesota right now, and oh yeah, they're dropping stuff on us, so you might want to, find a desk and tuck your head down because they're dropping nukes on us. So they can do SU announce to the whole county. Like I said, with the towers, anything with that SU, St. Louis County, right? So those work primarily only within our county, with some exception. SU roam is one of the exceptions. It doesn't follow the St. Louis County rule. SU roam does work statewide. It's most often used for deputies that are doing prisoner transports all over the state, either usually going and grabbing prisoners that have warrants for St. Louis County that makes sense to go grab them and bring them back to our jail. So they can still get a hold of our dispatch center from anywhere in the state. Makes it really nice. SU 911 is another one that doesn't follow the rules, even though it's St. Louis County 911, but if you activate that or talk on that outside of the county, it will still go back to our center. Going up to the top here in this off color, Northeast call. So just like MSP call, Northeast call is another way to get a hold of dispatch centers. Not State Patrol this time, but every single dispatch center in the Northeast region. By ARMER standard, they are all required to monitor this. Doesn't mean that there's a dispatcher dedicated to Northeast call. They're sitting in their chair and I'm on Northeast call today and maybe someone's gonna talk to me. No, they have an extra speaker on their desk. Every single dispatch center and position has a Northeast call speaker. So if somebody rogers up on it, they can hear it. National Weather Service actually issues out weather warnings to dispatch centers via Northeast call. So they can hit, they do Northeast call, any of the regional calls, they can issue all mass weather information really quickly to all the 911 centers simultaneously. And Weather Service, actually, for that matter, monitors Northeast call. I always forget that. So it works in reverse. If for whatever reason you had something crazy going on, or holy cow, that's a funnel cloud, and no, that is actually a tornado, and I should probably let all the dispatch centers know, and I'm gonna relay that to the weather service too, because they're probably gonna wanna track that to actually push out emergency message alerts on everyone's cell phone and TVs and radios. I got a tornado down here right in my backyard, this is my location, and then you'll start hearing everyone rogering up for that. The rest of them, Northeast 2 through 12, like I said before, those get issued out. At any given time, anyone in the Northeast region can be using those for anything. In my world, I commonly see these getting issued out for search and rescues that are outside of St. Louis County. If we're going to another county to assist, one county to another, we have a lot of different joint resources. What's our common operating platform in that bullseye chart? A Northeast. That's as close to the center as we can get, and we can still talk. So we get issued out of the Northeast. Dynamic regroup, don't even really have to worry about that one. In theory, Radio Shop can pump programming to some radios, but again, I don't think that's ever been used. 8 SOA, so as opposed to the F SOA, an 8 just stands for 800 megahertz, that's what these radios are pumping out. 800 megahertz scene of action. It's not the same as the Fs. Don't get them confused. If you're trying to tell somebody, hey, let's go on SOA 1. Is it 8 or is it F? Because there's a difference. The main difference is fire agencies have these. Everybody has these. The main users for an SOA is a fire department, right? For many different reasons. But if we can convince state patrol to go on an SOA with me so we can do traffic control, I don't want to go on an F because they don't have those programmed. They do have the 8s. So you say, hey, let's go on 8 SOA 1. Gotcha. All right, so going over into MN, Minnesota zone. So as you can see, we're kind of in that agency, local, county, Northeast state. So we're getting broader in our reach as we go across this list. So now in all the greens, STAC 1 through STAC 12. Like I said before, most common use for an STAC is air medical. And that is true state across the entire state. There are some other law enforcement specific STACs or law enforcement encrypteds throughout the state, but these ones are non-encrypted primarily for fire or EMS purposes. Can be used for a bunch of things, but that's usually what we see them for. So fortunately, there's 12 of them, but again, there's only 12 of them for the entire state. So if you think about that, there could be a lot going on in the state. It's not very many to go around. As long as everyone's using them for the correct purposes, in theory, we shouldn't be abusing them, and that should be enough. Here's a problem with these STACs though. However many radios there are in the state, on the top of my head, I think it's 20,000. I think it might be a lot more than that though. Anyway, that's a lot of radios that have this programming. That's a lot of people that can mess a lot of things up with that. One of the things that you can mess up with that is if I turn my radio on and I go to STAC 1 because, oh, did you hear Minneapolis has riots again? And they're talking about it on STAC 1. It's super interesting. Oh, hey, there's a big building burning down there too. It's on STAC 2 though. You should listen to that one so we can hear that too. And oh, by the way, STAC 3's got something going on in STAC 4. And our little tower here is pulling in all this radio conversations at the same time. And now dispatch tries to talk to us, or we try to talk to them, and our tower site is consumed by these STACs. It's not hurting Minneapolis because we're listening to their stuff going on. It's hurting our tower here, and it's hurting any of our neighbors that are trying to use that tower here. So when you park on something, when it's displayed on your screen, you are consuming a resource every time someone talks on that. So if you do not have a reason to listen to something, don't park on it. It's okay to go to STAC if that's what you're assigned. I'm the landing zone officer. All right, I go to STAC 2. I have full permission. I have a reason, an objective to be on there and listen to that. That's okay. Now, scanning. Like I said before with that tower up in cab, I can scan every single STAC if I want. Doesn't hurt a dang thing because I'm up in cab on a lonely tower up by the Canadian border. I have FE2 displayed on my radio. I'm not going to hear any of these STACs going on I'm not hearing radio traffic coming up from the cities, coming up from southern Minnesota, because as long as everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing, there's no radio by that tower that's telling that tower to broadcast S-tags. Now, all of a sudden, CAB has a landing zone they're setting up, and they're chattering on S-tag 3. Whoa, my scan's picking up S-tag 3 now, because they had a radio that they turned to S-tag 3, because they said, I have a reason to talk on S-tag 3. So again, scanning, you're never hurting the system, you're not doing anything wrong, you can scan whatever you want. Obviously within reason, because you scan too much and then this thing never shuts up and you're not going to hear your pertinent, relevant traffic. But you're not going to hurt the system and no one's going to yell at you. If you are parking on some of these and it's causing issues with the system or causing issues with the tower, the radio shop and dispatch can see which radio is doing that, and they can see, oh, that's interesting, why is your radio on S-tag 2? We don't have any of our S-tags active for any actual incident in your area, let alone our county. Your radio is causing the issue, same thing with yours and mine, and all right, hey, we're gonna make a phone call to the fire chief here and say what the hell is going on, turn your radios off, because you shouldn't be on them, and if chief doesn't answer, someone doesn't answer, then these radios all of a sudden turn into a brick, because we are impacting public safety in our area by not abiding by the standards. So, again, if you're issued it, use it, have fun, not a big deal. At the very bottom of that list, you do have a couple more SOAs. So you have SOA 8, SOA 3, and 8 SOA 4. Now again, local, county, regional, statewide, into the blue column. Now we are finally in our national. The ones that bottom of the toolbox, rusty tool, probably never use it, but it's there, and remember it's there. These are, you're able to use these anywhere in the country. They are FCC licensed for everywhere. And in theory, if federal agencies or entities was coming in, they could have a lot of these programs, especially these ACall 90 through 8TAC 94. They could be coming in and have those. Now, FBI has those programmed in, so no matter where they go in the country, they have it, and they can interop with other agencies really easy like that. We don't have to reprogram radios when something really big bad happens. We can talk right off the bat. Another thing with those is there's 2 repeaters set up in the county, one up in Ely, one in Duluth. It doesn't help us much right here, but they're repeaters for these, so you could use those. But also, just outside of Duluth, where I work out of at Pike Lake, we have a tower trailer that we can set up, and it repeats these as well. So let's say our ARMER tower went down for whatever reason. Greenwood fire, one of the ARMER towers almost got hit by the wildfire, right? So we actually brought up several towers up there in advance to say, if this tower goes down, we can pop one up from the trailer and go right back to work. So same thing, a tower goes down local, you give the county a call, whatever, we probably wouldn't know about it, just saying, if a tower goes down, that's a big deal. But then we say, hey, guess what? You're not gonna be able to talk outside of your area, but we can give you maybe a 10 to 15 mile ring where those 8 call and 8 tags work. So we might have to page you via cell phone call to wake you up, but then for your operation, you have something that still works. We do have another tower that is a full, basically like an ARMER replacement tower. That would be the first best bet, especially if a tower goes down. That's a long-term event. That's not gonna be fixed overnight or within a couple of months realistically. So we can replace, hopefully, more or less full operational capacity of that ARMER tower that used to exist. 8 call 90D through 94D. The only main difference with those, the D at the end, that stands for direct. So just like an SOA, those directs, it's like a walkie-talkie. You're just talking from one radio to another. So when I go out of county, say into Wisconsin for mutual aid for something, in theory, according to the FCC, I shouldn't use these SOAs because they're not recognized out there, but these are national, so I'm okay and no one's gonna come. They don't have the little FCC truck with the radar disc trying to triangulate my position. I can use any of these, especially the directs, no harm, no foul. And then again, more duplication on those 8 SOAs and FSOAs. if that's the easiest way for you to find those, you can use it. You just climb all the way down there by turning your knob, no problem. The very last zone, 7C, these are mostly 7 SOAs. The only difference, instead of 8, it's 7. What does that mean? 700 megahertz. In theory, 700 megahertz penetrates vegetation in buildings a little bit better. Just how the signal goes, it's a little bit of a tighter signal, so it can pierce through a little bit more. You might be able to squeak a little bit more range out of it. I know I've heard from one department that they said that they were having a little bit of issues on 8 SOA. They moved to a 7 SOA, that did the trick. I've never tested myself, but again, it's a tool in the toolbox. If you find yourself in that situation and you happen to remember me blabbering here tonight, and go, oh yeah, hey, let's try one of those 7 SOAs. Maybe that'll do the trick. Or you just want to train or do whatever, run your event on 7 SOAs. Guess what? Chances are 1 in a million that somebody else is using one of these at the same time you are within your 5-mile ring. You're safe to use them. Again, you don't have to be issued these. Use it at your own free will, whenever you want. All right, so I went over that pretty quick, rapid fire, but any questions on the fleet map or anything in here you're seeing that you're wondering how they work? Yeah, go ahead, sir.
On the 7 SOAs, I know on the regular 800s, on the other banks, you can't scan. Can you scan the 7?
Correct, you cannot, so that's a good point. So that's something that I missed. So on your SOAs, there's a couple differences with those. So I'm on 8 SOA 1 right now. When I key up, I hear nothing. Well, what the heck? I'm not getting that push to talk tone because my radio's not talking to that ARMER tower and saying, yep, go ahead and talk, and coming back. It's just like a normal walkie-talkie, normal VHF radio. There's no tone. So it throws everyone off the first time you're using it. It's like, I'm used to hearing a tone on these radios. I'm not getting anything. The other thing, he said, scan. Once you bring yourself to an SOA, the reason why you should let somebody know that you're on an SOA is you're not hearing any of your scan traffic. You're not hearing FE2 anymore. You're not hearing your incident that you programmed into scan. You're not hearing SU911, nothing. You're kind of putting your radio into the super stupid simple mode where it's just a walkie-talkie now. I gotta test it again. I'm pretty sure it's still accurate, but your orange button should not function on SOAs either, again, because I'm taking myself off of that network. So again, more reason to let somebody know I'm going to an SOA, I'm going way over here off on my little island, come and get me if there's a problem. But yeah, good point on that. But yeah, that doesn't matter if it's an 8 SOA or 7 SOA, you can't scan. You can scan them if you want, but you have to take all of your normal ARMER scan stuff off. So you can either scan, I want to scan 7 SOA 1 through 12, or I want to scan what I probably should be scanning on the ARMER network. There are really extra fancy radios that cost way too much, courtesy of Motorola, that can scan both of them simultaneously, but you got to pay for that feature to the tune of several $1,000s, and it's not worth it. There's no true reason to scan SOA specifically. It would be nice to do it backwards, but yeah. All right, any other questions on this one before I move on? Perfect. All right. Couple more examples. EMS does have extra fleet mapping. The main difference with EMS fleet map is everything in this kind of pinkish purple, all the hospitals throughout the whole region, so they can make contact directly with hospitals or directly with cross patching. So even if it's something they don't have programmed in, cross patch 1, cross patch 2, they get assigned those, and that's what they use to talk to whoever they need to talk to. I always like to show this one as an example through the rescue squad fleet map. When you look at a fire fleet map, for the most part, it makes sense. Everything's kind of in order. You can find things easily. You look at rescue squad, it's, okay, we got LAW 1, then we got rescue 1, then we got FE 1, then we got common 1, then we got STOC 1. Okay, I can see where they're going with that kind of. I got LAW 3, FE 3, holy cow. How do you find everything? It's a maze and a puzzle. But it works for them and it works for their mission, because a lot of times it's not something that's maybe their jurisdiction that they're being dispatched to. They might be the assisting agency or working with somebody else, so they need to jump on different people's main talk groups quickly. So that's kind of the reason why they have things structured like that. It's always just a bear for me to teach this one. I like fire because it's, hey, FE3, FE4, it's easy to talk about. This one, I gotta jump all over the dang screen to try to explain where everything is. So if any one of them could memorize this, I'd like to do a test one day, and I'll give you a blank piece of paper, fill it out for me. Tell me where everything is. All right, so how do we use these radios? I'll use mine as an example. Mine is an APX model. It is a little bit different, but functionally, for the most part, it is the same. Just take a glance at some of yours that you got. Okay, so you don't have the buttons on the front. That's okay. All right, so actually, before I do this, I gotta apologize to Evelyn because I forgot this very important part. With any fire radio that's programmed, there's like 5,000 different features that you can do for these radios that radio techs can program it any which way. But there's kind of two main groupings that they try to do. One half is the law enforcement side, the other half is fire and EMS. On the fire and EMS side, they have the microphones programmed in a way that it's trying to listen for my voice and it's trying to mute out everything behind me or around me, because you're probably around a pump or a generator or a truck or something that's extremely loud, or you're outside in the wind or whatever's going on, and you need the background noise to be silenced and you need your voice to be amplified so people can hear you. In the law enforcement world, they want it reverse. They want, when I'm talking to the husband and the wife and there's some domestic going on and she says, well, I'm gonna kill you and this and that, and she's way off in the other room, dispatch and my partners want to be able to hear what's going on in my surroundings. So with law enforcement programming, it amplifies everything in the background to try to bring that out. And that's why if you've ever heard in any of the law enforcement, they come on a different talk group, especially if it's a canine, all you hear is roof, 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 the dog just going absolute crazy in the backseat. But yeah, with your radios, how they're programmed, you want to make sure to the best of your ability, you center up with that radio. So if I have a portable like this, or if I have the speaker, if I'm turning my head down to it, that makes a world of difference. If I'm talking like this, and probably we've all heard somebody where it sounds like they're 10 miles away from their radio, that they're trying to talk into it like this. It's not, it's the programming on there that's trying to muffle out. It's going, you sound like background noise because you're coming from a different direction. So I'm gonna try to mute you a little bit. So if I can, it's obviously hard when you're in full gear and trying to get towards your speaker mic, but if you can, try to orient yourself to it a little bit. The other thing with any of these radios, they are a little bit sensitive to wind noise. So again, dispatch or anyone else keeps asking you to repeat yourself because they can't understand or whatever. They're like, yeah, it is pretty windy out here right now. Maybe I'll try to shield some of that wind and get my transmission through. They are sensitive to that. They try to fight through the wind, but it doesn't always work the greatest. So yeah, send it up. So, what'd I do? All right, so this one is essentially identical to what you got in front of you. So your shorter, fat one, if you haven't found it before, that's your power and your volume knob. It does click. When you turn it on and off, you can feel it and hear it. The further you spin it, the louder it gets. Emergency button. Talked about the orange button that is not a power button. When these radios were first issued out, there was a certain deputy chief down in Duluth that swore for the first 2 weeks it was definitely his power button, as he hit it every single day until he finally remembered it wasn't. This little ring across the top, and with that little indicator, is your ABC selector ring. So your ABC selector ring, I just verified it with yours, but I'll maybe I'll grab yours real quick, just to make sure the programming is what I think it is on yours. Yep. All right, so in position A, you are in scan mode. You're hearing what's on your display, and you're hearing anything else you put into your scan bank, and we'll go through how to program that and what that looks like. Position B, you're only gonna hear what's on your display. That's it, nothing else. So if you're scanning multiple different talk groups, and you're going, oh, there's all this background chatter. I'm trying to focus on FE2 to listen to what's going on, but somebody else chirps up and I don't wanna miss anything. I'm gonna turn it to position B so I can focus at the talk group at hand. I'm like a squirrel, I see something shiny and I'm going off. Same thing if I'm hearing too much stuff, I get distracted easy, so I wanna focus. There's different priorities though when you're scanning too. Whatever you have displayed, that has the top priority. So if you've ever been scanning and you hear something else talking and it gets cut off and something else jumps and talks over that, oh, what the heck just happened? Probably what you had displayed started talking. So maybe something on my scan bank is talking, and then FE2, which is on my radio talks, it's gonna cut that off. Cause I'm telling my radio by parking on that FE2 or whatever's on my display is the most important thing, and I don't wanna miss any radio traffic. Which means you are gonna miss radio traffic potentially on anything else in your scan bank if you're not selecting that, cause you're telling the radio, that's a lower priority for me. Position C, the last one, that's where that's putting your radio into programming mode. So that's how you program your scan bank. So when I put, let me take myself off SOA, it doesn't work like that. But when I put myself into position C, now I can go in and start to edit my scan bank. Most radios, there's not a super easy way to do that. Even with this one, with the big screen, and I got extra fancy buttons on here, there's not an easy way to just see my entire list. But if I'm trying to scan and I'm taking so dang long to, oh, what's my radio doing? My radio's yelling at me. It's saying, hey, do something with me. Guess what? You're not receiving, you can't transmit. This radio's in program mode. What the heck? Oh, I'm in position C. Maybe I knocked it into position C. That's all right. I'm gonna go back to B. So now I'm gonna hear FE10 like I wanted to hear. So it's just a thing saying your radio's not working, not functioning right now because you're trying to program it. Programming takes a little bit more hands-on. So like I said before, I'll stay after this whole thing. If you want to go through your scan banks, I can take a look at your radio. We can go through them. A lot of times with the radios, you have to go try to look through all of those different zones to see which ones you have scanned. You gotta look for the little Z icon on them and try to hunt it down. So it's a little bit of peck and find, but we can get through it and scan. The most commonly recommended things to scan, some departments have this as their policy or their standard. The county doesn't tell you what you can and can't do as far as scan goes, but the three most common ones are your paging talk group, so FE2, your admin, so the one that's independent to your department or agency, and then SU 911. So that in case somebody hits their orange button in a real emergency, you're still hearing them talk. As long as you have those three, and that's all you're scanning, you shouldn't ever get overwhelmed with too much radio traffic going on in here. And then, if I have those on scan, and I'm issued out FE7 for my working channel, I can go to FE7, but I can still hear dispatch paging these extra resources on FE2 that I requested. And I can hear them rogering up and, okay, yep, they said, yep, they're coming. They said they're sending two. They said they have a tender on the way. Fantastic. So it's always nice to be able to hear that paging channel, especially for what else is going on. Even if it's just situational awareness. Oh crap, hey, they just got a fire themselves. I can't request them for mutual aid now. So I got that in the back of my mind. What else is going on around my general area? But yeah, there are some people that like to scan way too much and their radio never shuts it. Like my radio has like a 3-hour battery life. It's just ridiculous. Well, yeah, because the thing is constantly talking at you. Of course it does. And lastly, the skinny knob is the same for your radios as this picture here. That's your position knob. So again, looking at the fleet map, that takes you up and down, position 1 through 16. Starting to become more and more frequent where the numbers 1 through 15, it doesn't have a 16 on there, but this ring doesn't exist anymore, or it's broken off or whatever. It's very rare for someone to, I don't know too many people that look down and go, okay, well I know on my fleet map that's position 16, so I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna go to position 7, so I'll switch to 7. Usually you're looking at your display to see what it's displaying. I need FE7 right there. Okay, got it. But yeah, that's your indicator if you want a little sheet. But you can always remember both directions, you do a hard stop. When you're transitioning through zones, there's not a hard stop. And then this one varies so much on radios, so if you don't mind, I'll steal yours again. So on your guys' radios, with how they are programmed, your purple button, you can press that right now if you want. Your purple button does an RSSI check. So right now it says PALO, RSSI 0. What does that mean? PALO is the tower that this is trying to talk to. RSSI, radio strength signal indicator of 0. That's not good. That's no signal. I did hear just something there on the scan, so I was getting something for a second. But generally speaking, oh, let's see right there. Now I just bounced to Virginia with an RSSI of 46. So maybe we are on a little cross path here where two towers are really close as overlapping, and this is looking for signal, and it's always trying to find the best signal it can. Generally speaking, an RSSI of 30 or greater, you're going to be able to hear and you're going to be able to transmit. It's a real easy way to pre-plan areas or buildings or outside or anything like that. You don't need a second person to pre-plan to see if you have radio coverage. I can walk around a building and keep hitting my RSSI button, my purple button on the side, and see, okay, I have signal here, I have signal here, I don't have signal here. If I move into a new house and I want to figure out where my charger is going to be, because I like to listen to my radio with it in the charger, which is okay to do. I want to make sure I put my charger where the radio actually has reception. I realize that's going to be a pretty bad spot to put it. Again, you get a new building built or something, a new school pops up, whatever the case is. Hey, I want to take a walk through your building and do a radio check through it. I can check the RSSI throughout it. Or you have an area outside, whatever it is. Yeah, we had issues on that last incident. I want to see, was it just a comms issue because I wasn't saying what I was supposed to or someone else wasn't, or is it truly a radio reception issue? You can go back and find out real easy, or you can find out while you're on an incident too. Say you keep trying to talk and you get the bonk, right? Bonk. That bonk means potentially several things. Usually what it means is somebody else was talking. They didn't let off their key. Maybe they stopped talking, but they're still holding down the push to talk. Still holding down the push to talk, so you get bonked. The other reason could be that you're out of range. If you get bonked, bonk, 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 then you take a look at your radio, it will tell you right immediately after you key up, it'll say out of range. Just means that you're not talking to a tower anymore. Oh, really? That's weird. Let me hit my RSSI button. 0. Yeah, that explains it. I gotta walk somewhere else to find coverage. Below your push to talk button, on the side you have this button, we're gonna call it 1 dot. So that's the one closest to your push to talk. Your 1 dot button on these is programmed. That's interesting. To do what? Okay, yep. So that is programmed to go zone up. The button on the bottom is zone down. It's kind of counterintuitive in a sense when you're looking at this. When I say that top button, so I'm on FA. I'm right here right now. I'm looking at all this stuff. So if I turn my skinny knob, I'm going up and down. If I hit that top button, hold on. Yeah, if I hit that top button, I'm going to the right. So if I zone up or press that top zone button, I go to the right. If I press the bottom button, that's moving me left. So I'm back to A. If I know that I need to get over to 7C because I want to do some fancy 700 megahertz talking, I don't have to go all the way this direction. I can go backwards. Zones going a full loop. So I can zone down from here, and now I got 7C, 7SOA. That's another thing. I just went to 7C, and now I'm getting this tone again. The radio is trying to tell me to do something because It's not working. What is it doing? It says empty list. Oh, it's because I'm on A. I'm on scan, and it's saying you don't scan, you can't scan on 7. So take it into position B. Take it off scan to be able to talk on these and use these. So the radios are always trying to key in on maybe what's going on, what you forgot to do. The other things with the radios is, for one, antennas are not handles. Shouldn't be tossing them around. That will be the first thing to go. Antennas do break. They do get old after they've been bent out, 500,000 times. If you're having radio issues, easy in-house troubleshooting, swap your antenna with somebody else's and see if that solves your issue. If it is, well, you just found a really cheap, easy part to fix. Another thing, with any of these radios, funnily enough, one of the standards is it should clip into place twice, a dual locking mechanism. So most of them you can't even hear it on them anymore, but 1, 2, there we got it. So the whole reason for that is it clips twice to make it so that when I drop this or it gets ran over by a truck, hey, look at that, the battery's still in and the thing still works. These things have been ran over before. They've been dropped off of some pretty high places, and they're surprisingly durable, actually. Most of these, especially these XTS 1500s, they are older radios, but most of them, by and large, still work really, really good for their age. The only downside is Motorola says, we want to sell the more expensive ones, so we don't want to make too many parts for these anymore, so we're discontinuing them. Making batteries, antennas, internal parts, screens, a lot harder to come by, but most of them are still trucking pretty good. The other thing, if you have a hand, yeah, go ahead.
I'll get back on the antennas. Now, does the length of the antenna matter? I've seen some with shorter ones.
It does.
Short ones with little knobs on it and longer ones.
Yep, so contrary to popular belief, length does matter. So generally, most areas in the county, you got good reception. The stubby antennas, you're still probably gonna work fine. We have tested them on areas where you're only getting maybe like a 30 to 40 RSSI on a longer antenna, and maybe the stubby is like 5 to 10 RSSI less. Not a huge difference, but you do get a little bit more. Like my radio, for example, this one's a lot longer. The main reason for that is this is a dual digital 800, 700 megahertz as well as VHF. It's the VHF side that needs that longer antenna. Digital radios, they don't quite need the same antenna length, but yeah, especially law enforcement, I see the stubby antennas most frequently. Especially like city cops, you see them, they have great reception in Virginia, in Hibbing, in Duluth. They're not going out into the sticks. They don't have reception or coverage issues hardly ever, and they can get away with those small ones, so it's not constantly poking them in the chin when they put it in their vest or something like that. But yeah, a slight difference, but most people don't notice too much issues with it. With hand mics, if you have one of those attached onto your radio, that's another thing to check if you're having reception, talking issues, whatever. Somebody's not hearing you. They say, yeah, you sound all crackly and you sound like crap when you talk. Maybe that's not just my voice. Try taking your hand mic off and talking without that, because those cords get wrapped around your back and stretched and caught on gear, and you were walking through the woods and it gets caught on a tree branch or whatever. The copper in those wires get pulled and extended, and eventually they start to break apart. The inside's relatively inexpensive piece to swap out. Don't throw your whole radio away. Let somebody know, I got a bad hand mic, I need a new one, or I'm gonna use my radio without it until I get a new one.
And the one button goes all the way around.
Yes, yep, goes in a full loop. So yeah, if you want, you never have to press that bottom button ever. You can just go one direction in a big loop if you want. Sometimes that's the easiest way to find it. Yeah. Another thing with the radios and the batteries, if you look at the bottom of your radio right now, you should, most likely, not always, but you should see 2 green dots. One on the battery, one on the radio, one on the battery on this side. Those green dots mean that this radio and the battery is intrinsically safe. I can go into a gaseous, flammable environment and I'm not gonna arc, spark, and blow myself and my friends up. Downside with the aftermarket batteries, most often than not, they are not intrinsically safe. So just because your radio has the green dot but the battery doesn't, it might not arc, spark, or do anything bad, but it hasn't been lab tested, certified, all that kind of stuff. It's not to the standard that should be safe. Obviously, we don't want to put ourselves into a room full of propane, natural gas, anything like that anyway, but something to keep in mind if your radio doesn't have a green dot on both of them. Yeah, we'll get into charging in a little bit here. So, okay, yeah. The fortunate thing with these, honestly, there's not too many extra features. It's like new cars nowadays. They have all the bells and whistles and sensors and things that can break, and you can press the wrong button and program it wrong and this and that. And this thing has quite a lot going on that I never use because it's a radio. That's what I want it for. I don't need all these extra features and functions. All they're gonna do is break and cost us money. So these tried and true and tested, and not a lot of extra buttons to get confused. All right, on the front of your screen, this is off just a slightly different model than what you have. So some of the differences is on those, I believe you will not have the clock on them, but even so, on any of the other models, who's actually using their radio as their watch? You got cell phones, you got watches, you got clocks in your vehicles. And the time is never right on any of the radios that have those anyway, because your battery was taken out and then put back in, and oh my god, you didn't spend the 5 minutes to reprogram your clock. So anyway, it exists. The other one is an indicator like this that pretty much every Motorola radio has. It looks just like your cell phone. You got bars of service, right? If you don't see those 4 bars, if you only see the little tower symbol, it means you have 0 bars. You have 0 coverage most likely. If you got all 4, some of the radios only display 3. But if you're full, you're full. You're firing on all cylinders. You're having a good day. This little Z with that little tiny arrow at the tail of it, that means scanned. So when I'm looking at my screen and I see, okay, I see FE2 and I see the little Z above it, and I'm on position A. That means I'm scanning. Whatever's in my scan list, I will hear that as well. I go to position B, that little Z disappears. That's telling me I'm off scan. Same thing when I'm going into my program into position C and I'm trying to program stuff. As I go through the different talk groups while programming, I'll see some of my talk groups have a Z, and then I shift to another one and the Z disappears in the next one. That means that one is programmed in my scan and the other is not. And again, like I said, whoever wants their scan list adjusted or checked or looked at, I'm here all night, so we can do that after. The other one, battery life indicator. These are a very rough indicator. It's kind of shocking with, again, how much technology and R&D they put into these that your cell phone has a much accurate. You can say, I want to see what percentage I'm at. Does a much better job than these radios. You get 3 bars and half the time you don't even have this symbol at all. There's 2 different circumstances where you will not have your battery life indicator symbol on there. Scenario 1, you're using a non-Motorola battery. You're using a non-Impress one, a third party, whatever. Battery might give it juice, might have no issues, but it's not mating properly with the radio, so it can't talk to it to tell it how much battery percentage or how many bars the battery has. The other scenario is if your radio hasn't refreshed with the charger. So what that is when you put your radio into your charger, you normally see a red light. That means your battery has been depleted and it's going to start charging. Eventually you see it starting to flash green. That means you're at 90%. And then you got solid green light on your charger. That means you're 100%, that radio is ready to rock and roll. What happens when I put it in there and the light turns orange? That's interesting, never seen orange before. Maybe it's charging it. No, it's actually depleting it. It's going into that refresh where it slowly depletes the battery all the way to 0% and then does an extremely slow trickle charge all the way back up to 100%. On any of the actual Motorola Impress batteries, it's really important that you periodically do that because it's good for the battery health overall, and then also you lose some features if your battery doesn't mate with the charger and then mate with your radio. So if you haven't done that in a while, you might lose the symbol because the battery's like, well, I don't know how much battery percentage I have. I've never gone through this refresh. I have no idea what's going on. When you do that, if I say, okay, I'm gonna be around, I'm home all weekend, any calls that happens this weekend, I'm going on them. And I put my radio in the charger and I see orange. Maybe this weekend's not a good weekend for me to do this because my radio is gonna drop down to 0. And again, it takes like 12 hours to go through this process. So the second I get a call, I'm gonna pick it up and it's gonna be at like 3% and I'm gonna get one radio transmission out and it's gonna be dead. Probably not a good time to do it. Good time to do it is I gotta work for the next like 2 days straight. I know I'm not gonna make any calls. Oh crap, my radio went, the light's red. I want it to go through the refresh. I'm gonna take it back out, put it back in again. Now it's orange. Same thing if it goes orange on you. Oh, I don't want it to drain right now. I want it to actually charge. Charger says orange, take it out, put it back in. Now the light goes red. We're good to go. So again, you can tell that charger just by taking it in and out to switch between the two versions. What else is my screen telling me? Well, if I look at the top left, these first 2 letters are going to tell me what zone I'm in. So if you're looking at that fleet map and I can flip back to it, that's telling me that I'm in that FA zone. FB, that's all of that's your home zone. That's where FE2 is at the very top. The next SU is telling me I'm on a St. Louis County specific talk group, and my talk group that I currently have displayed and selected is FE1. I'm talking to self-dispatch paging and self-departments right now. The next line going down, this is my radio ID. This is an extra long one. Most of yours will just have the acronym for your department, and then it'll probably say a number and then P at the very end. So this one, for example, is a St. Louis County Sheriff's Office Command 11 portable. That's the radio's name. That's what dispatch sees when this radio keys up every single time. And so that's how you can tell them apart. Most of them will have a sticker on them if yours do. I'm assuming on the front, like a black sticker with gold writing on it, tells you what the radio name is as well. And that should match your programming. If you get new radios, maybe another department donates them or whatever, even if the programming the radio is good, the radio shop still should reprogram that radio to your specific department so they can make it assigned to you, so that when that emergency button gets pressed, or even just when someone's keying up and talking, they know which department's actually talking, so it doesn't say whatever, St. Paul Fire when you're keying up. It's like, oh, what the heck, that's not right. St. Paul Fire donated some radios. They're really nice, but these you do not have. These 3 buttons, or these 3 on the bottom, you don't have on your radios. It's good to know what they are though, or on your screen rather. The next version up from yours has 3 buttons on the front center, just like this one does here. It's called the 1 dot, the 2 dot, the 3 dot button. Motorola likes their dots and they dummy proof it for me and I appreciate it. But they just correspond with each one of these. So this 1 dot is doing this button. That's how I zone up. This button in the middle is my mute, and this one's zoned down. So if you ever get your hands on somebody else's radios and you need to figure out how the heck to do it, and their side buttons aren't doing what my side buttons are, well, if they have zone up and zone down on their screen, you got to use these front buttons. Every fire department's radio programming is the same except for your admin, because you got different departments, right? But everything else as far as the fleet map, it's all in the same position, it's all the same. You can toss radios back and forth and you're still gonna know how to use them. That's gonna be, this kind of stuff is the only differences that you're gonna see between different models. There's not too many Apexes out there right now. It's mostly these XTSs. Some departments are slowly getting to the Apex. Usually, what's that both have? Is it like 6500s? Whatever. It doesn't matter what model they are. They look more closer to like this with the fatter screen. But yeah, just know what those are. So if you're trying to figure out zones, you can use somebody else's radio. No issue. All right, so the average amount of talking per transmission in the state of Minnesota, 3 to 5 seconds. Sometimes you listen to maybe other departments and it sounds like, that can't be right, 3 to 5 seconds, because they talk for 30 seconds straight every single time they key up. But that is the average. And it's a good thing for our system, because again, if you're on a tower with one talk path already consumed, you got everyone talking for 30 seconds to a minute straight, that doesn't work out. But if it's 3 to 5 seconds, these things are lighting and firing up back and forth, no problem. Know what you want, know what you're saying before you key up. It's not like a cell phone conversation, telephone conversation where I can and and let me think about that. I should know, I am trying to talk to you, and this is what I'm gonna say, key up and say it. And again, it helps, it's proper radio etiquette, helps not consume too much airtime, and it makes sense to everyone, it sounds better. Also, only talk to one person at a time. Again, I'm gonna key up, say me to you, or hey you, this is me. Again, it doesn't matter which direction you're trying to say that at, it's okay. There's no, St. Louis County Dispatch isn't gonna rain down on you and say, whoa, you're not using proper ICS communication, you did it backwards, because guess what? Law enforcement in this county for some reason does it backwards of what fire likes to do it. I'm kind of on the fire side, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Just use plain language, say what you gotta say. But I'm gonna talk, hey you, this is me, this is what I need. Yeah, 10-4, got that, we'll take care of it. Okay, well now I'm gonna talk to this and do this and then back, but those are all separate transmissions, and I'm getting confirmation from every transmission after we're done talking. I don't wanna just key up again for that 30 seconds to a minute and start firing off all these orders and directions and questions, and oh, by the way, what'd you eat last night, and hey, did you pick up your kids from school yet, and this and that. One at a time, and knock it out so it's clear, everyone can confirm. And then the request, God, I've been saying for so many times, I'm gonna put an E in there. One day, I will fix that, but anyway, makes me look a lot smarter, I guess. Request the talk groups from dispatch. Again, those SOAs, use them at your discretion. Your admins, use it, whatever, no problem. But anything else, you have to request those from dispatch at a time. If you need it, ask for it, they'll give it to you. No problem, no harm, no foul. All right, so we went over changing zones, changing positions. You know what the orange button does now, and if you still don't, when you go home, maybe press it and find out and talk to dispatch for a couple minutes. And then charging your radio, what the different colors on that means, and then RSSI checks. Some more on the air medical policy. I can leave, or I guess you guys can come up and grab as many of these different policies that you want. Normally we hand them out like candy, and then your trash can gets filled up before everyone leaves, which doesn't matter, I can keep printing more. But if you want any of these more common policies for your departments to hang up on the wall or whatever, bathroom reading material, whatever you wanna call it, I have those, as well as maps of the tower sites, if you're curious on that. Additional resources. If you get into something where, whether it's a special event, major incident, big training thing with some community group you're trying to spin up to whatever, you need more radios. Give myself, Dewey, the dispatch center, radio shop, any one of us all communicates constantly. We have fire cache radios that are programmed with everything except for your admins, ready to go, always charged, checked twice a week or twice a month. And then I gotta change this because we have a whole bunch more than actually what this is right now. We are also the housers of a regional fire cache. So if anyone in the Northeast region has a major incident, we hoof those radios out to wherever it is. We like to be the housers of them because it's very close to home. So if any of our fire districts or areas, fire departments in our county need them, we have them close at hand. We don't have to wait for them. Incident command vehicles. We now have 2 of them. So we have one down closer to Duluth, Pike Lake, right where I office out of. Our second, our older one that still works perfectly fine, is now housed up in Virginia. So we do have those available 24/7. If you need it for incident command, make the phone call. Let dispatch know, they can get a hold of us. Call me direct, 24/7, midnight, 2 a.m., I don't care. I love bringing the trucks out, I love to help, do whatever we can. The trucks are not a rehab vehicle. That's the only disclaimer I'll put on that. We have other resources. If you need a rehab trailer or something like that, we can do that too. But these are mainly for incident command. You got a lot going on. You need, say it's 20 below and you're like, I can't run this incident while I'm freezing to death, trying to sit inside my cramped truck, whatever's going on. I need some space. I need heat, I need air conditioning, I need lights, and I need to be able to convince whoever else to come in the truck so we can form maybe unified command and make this thing run how it should. The trucks work good, they work like a bug lantern. Everyone goes, right? And that's what we want. We want people who are in control of different departments to be in the same place at the same time to be able to coordinate resources better. A lot of times, what happens, you got maybe multiple chiefs and they're kind of doing their own thing, and then you add law enforcement in the mix and everyone's doing their own thing. No, let's try to form unified command. So if you need it, please call for it. Like I talked about those trailer towers before, mobile repeaters. So again, you have major tower issues, we'll get one of those out. The first call is we're gonna make is always gonna be the radio text to figure out, is it a switch that needs to be thrown? Can they do something quick? If not, then we make the decision of maybe mobilize one of those towers. Most recently, we did the 8-TAC, 8-call repeater tower, brought that down to Pine County for a search that they had. They were in the Nemadji State Forest, and there's no cell coverage, there's no ARMER radio coverage, they have nothing. It's a black hole that swallows up signal and people. So I brought out that trailer tower to help them communicate in that little stretch of woods there. We can give you information on if you say, hey, we just scored this big grant, we're gonna buy new radios. Which one should we get? You know, myself, Dewey, folks in dispatch, radio shop, we can advise on what is kind of coming, what you should have to maybe future-proof your radios. Say, hey, there's this changing with encryption standards that might be coming. Maybe you should buy one that's capable of it. You don't need to buy the encryption package now, but future-proof yourself, right? So buy the right radio. Buy one that's approved to work on the ARMER network. It has happened before where departments bought these fancy radios that they got a screaming deal on, and guess what? They're not approved on the ARMER network. They won't connect. Can't connect. Not allowed to connect. Whatever. So we can advise on that. You need a comms plan or reserving talk groups, like I said, special events, training, anything like that. We can always help out day or night with any of that and do it in advance. Obviously, those generally comms plan for writing out an ICS form for a comms plan and designating all these things. Either A, this incident is massive and has been going on for probably well over 24 hours at this point, or we're pre-planning for a special event and we want to know what each talk group is going to be used for. Like my examples for the air show. We know way ahead of time what those are, so that the day of the air show, the weekend of the air show, we know which one is which. So help out with those. So, without further ado, I guess I'll open up to any questions and feel free to take a picture of that. I'll voice for myself on the bottom here. That is my office number, but it rolls over to my cell phone after hours. I know Dewey's in the same boat as I am. Call it anytime, day or night. We're pretty much on call 24/7. So if you need something, you got a big incident going on, you have questions about resources maybe that are at the county level or anything else like that, or you need help with coordination of something, let us know. Like I said, we like getting out into the field, getting out of our offices as much as we can, so please give us that excuse. Yeah, I guess any overarching questions you guys got? Anything that you can think of now?
Question on, back on the programming, when you're setting up your scan list, that dot behind the Z at the arrow.
Yeah, okay, that's another one I missed. So the dot behind the Z is another thing on the priority side. So in a sense, there's 3 priorities on scanning. Priority 1, the highest priority of what you always will hear, is gonna be what's on your display. Second priority is that Z with the priority dot. So that's gonna say if you got one talk group that has the Z dot and another one that just has the Z, and they're both talking at the same time, you're gonna hear the Z dot as a higher priority. So you could say, maybe I want my paging to be more important than my admin. I want FE2 as a Z dot, and my admin can just be a Z. You can set it up like that. Yep. And yeah, just real quick, if you're curious, I'm gonna make sure I don't dork it up here, but when you go into C, for one above your battery indicator, or where your battery indicator should be, you will see a flashing square rectangle type shape. And how you program your different zones or anything, and I'm not gonna mess yours up here, but you're hitting the purple button, and that brings you through Z, Z dot, no Z. If you see no Z, you're saying that talk group on my display is not being scanned. I can go up and down my list. If I want to go to a different zone to select something different to scan, on these radios, I have to take an off C, go to that different zone, go back to my program, and go up and down that list again. So like I said, it's cumbersome to program your scan. It's always something you should have programmed way before an incident, not in the middle of your call and trying to on the fly say, I wanna listen to these different things or whatever the case is. So do it ahead of time, and I'll stick around here as I'm packing up if anyone wants their radios looked at, or I can help you out. Build a scan list real quick. So I got you back on FE2 and you are on scan right now. Alright, any other questions? Good questions. Keep me on my toes. It's like, I probably said a handful of things different from last night. You know, it's nice when we can get three of us up here between myself, Dewey,